If your garden suddenly feels like it's falling apart right now, I want to start by telling you something important. It may not be your fault. A lot of gardeners hit this point in early summer where everything seemed to be going great just a few weeks ago. Your lettuce was thriving, your herbs looked amazing, maybe your peas were producing, and everything felt full of life. Then the summer heat shows up, and all of a sudden things start going downhill fast. Your lettuce bolts, your spinach turns bitter, cilantro flowers, the peas stop producing. Your tomatoes may still be alive, but they've stressed and they're slowing down. And if you're in a hot climate, summer can feel like the season where your garden starts dying instead of thriving. So why is this happening? Well, the season changed, but your crop selection didn't. And that's a huge difference because gardening gets a lot easier when you stop trying to force spring crops to survive summer and instead start growing crops that were built for summer. Instead of fighting summer, learn to garden with summer, especially with summer in your location. So in this video, I want to talk about which crops you should stop trying to grow once summer heat arrives and what you should grow instead if you want your garden to keep producing. Let's start with what I would stop growing. Now, before I say this, I want to be clear. Gardening always depends on your climate. If you live in a cool coastal climate or somewhere with mild summers, some of these crops may continue doing just fine. But if you're dealing with real summer heat, 90s, triple digits, blazing sun, these are the crops that usually start struggling. The first is lettuce. Lettuce is one of the clearest examples of a cool season crop. It loves mild weather. But once temperatures rise, lettuce starts preparing for survival and reproduction. That means bolting. You'll notice the center of the stem suddenly shoots upward almost overnight. The leaves become more upright, the plant stretches, and before long it starts flowering. At that point, the leaves usually turn bitter and tough. The plant is basically done. Spinach behaves similarly. It hates heat. Once temperatures climb, spinach bolts quickly and quality drops fast. Cilantro is another one that frustrates people. It can look beautiful one day and be flowering the next. That's summer talking. Peas are another crop that I usually stop experiencing much from once real heat arrives, even mild heat here. They love cool weather and often decline quickly as temperatures go up. Broccoli, cauliflower, and many brassicas also struggle. So if you're trying to keep these crops alive in intense summer heat, you may be fighting an uphill battle. Instead, this is when I pivot to crops that actually love heat. These are the crops that don't just tolerate summer, they thrive in it. The first is okra. If you've never grown okra, summer is the perfect time to try it. Okra absolutely loves heat. In fact, it's one of the few crops that seem to get happier as temperatures get hotter. When many plants are stressed at 95, 100 degrees, okra is basically saying, finally. It grows fast, it produces heavily, and it handles brutal heat really well. The key with okra is harvesting regularly because the pods get tough quickly if left on the plant too long. The second crop is sweet potatoes. Most people think of sweet potatoes mainly as a fall harvest crop. But what they may not realize is how much these plants love summer heat. Sweet potato vines thrive in hot weather. They spread aggressively, they shade the soil, and they create a living mulch effect that helps protect the garden. And that ground coverage can actually help moderate soil temperatures. And underneath all that growth, the roots are developing into sweet potatoes. The third crop is peppers, and this is one of my favorite summer crops because they often reward patience. A lot of gardeners panic when peppers sit there doing almost nothing in spring. They stay small, they don't even seem to grow much, and people assume that something's wrong. But peppers are not in a hurry when temperatures are mild. They really come alive when the heat arrives. Once days get consistently warm and nights stop cooling off too much, pepper plants often hit a completely different gear. Growth really accelerates, and the flowering and the production improves dramatically. Now, just like tomatoes, extreme heat can cause flower drop, especially once temperatures get into the upper 90s or triple digits. But overall, peppers are much more comfortable in the heat than tomatoes are. That's why in many hot climates, peppers can actually be one of the most reliable summer producers in the garden. Bell peppers, jalapenos, serranos, shishitos, many do very well in the heat. The only thing with peppers, especially the bell peppers in the larger size, is they can, even though they love the heat, they can get sun scald. So if you don't have a great canopy of leaves covering those fruits, it's best to shade the plants in the afternoon. The fourth crop is eggplant. Eggplant loves warmth. It hates cold soil and cool nights, which is why many gardeners struggle with it in spring. But once the summer heat arrives, eggplants often explode with growth. If you've struggled with slow eggplant plants earlier in the season, don't give up too soon. Sometimes they're just waiting for real heat. The fifth crop is Armenian cucumber. And if you've never grown these, they are fantastic for hot climates. Technically, they are not true cucumbers, but they grow similarly and handle heat much better than traditional cucumbers. Regular cucumbers can struggle with intense summer stress. Armenian cucumbers often keep right on going through it. They're productive, mild tasting, and great for salads. The sixth crop is cowpeas, also known as black-eyed peas or southern peas. These are seriously underrated. They tolerate heat, poor soil, and dry conditions better than many common vegetables. They're productive, resilient, and useful as both food and soil building crops. Because they are legumes, they also help support soil fertility by collecting nitrogen in their root systems and leaving any extra for the next crop that grows there. The seventh crop is basil. Basil loves summer. While cilantro throws in the towel, basil is just getting started. This is one of the easiest summer wins. Plant basil in warm weather and it often takes off really quickly. It also pairs beautifully with tomatoes, both in the garden and in the kitchen. Now, choosing the right crops is only half the battle. Even heat-loving crops need help getting established. So let's talk about how to help these summer crops thrive. The first thing is watering deeply. One of the biggest mistakes I see in summer is shallow daily watering. People give their plants a quick sprinkle every day and think they're helping. Usually they're not. Shallow watering encourages shallow roots, and shallow roots are a disaster in summer. You want roots growing deep into the cool, moist soil where all that moisture stays available longer. That means watering deeply enough to encourage downward growth. Deep roots make plants far more resilient during heat waves. Shallow watering tends to keep the roots on the surface of the soil where the sun is going to quickly dry them out. I want to spend another minute on roots because this is something most gardeners don't think about enough. When you look at a plant, it's easy to focus on what you can see: the leaves, the stems, the flowers, the fruit. But in summer, what's happening below the soil often matters even more than what's happening above it. The second thing is mulch. I talk about mulch a lot because it matters a lot. Mulch isn't just about making your garden look nice. Mulch is armor. It protects your soil from extreme temperature swings. It reduces evaporation. It supports the soil biology, and it helps keep roots cooler. Bare soil under summer sun can get incredibly hot, and that heat affects roots and microbial life. A thick layer of mulch helps buffer that. Straw works great, shredded leaves work great, compost works great. Wood chips around larger crops can also be excellent. Just keep mulch slightly away from the stems to avoid rot. The third thing is getting plants established before peak heat, if possible. This is important. A well-established plant with deep roots handles summer much better than a tiny seedling with a weak root system. That's why timing matters. The closer you get to peak summer heat, the harder establishment becomes. The fourth thing is paying attention to stress signals. Watch your plant. Learn what stress looks like. Leaf curl, midday wilting, flower drop, burned leaf edges, pest pressure. These are all signals, and the earlier you catch the problems, the easier they are to fix. And finally, remember this: not every season is meant for every crop. A lot of gardeners' frustration comes from trying to force plants that thrive in conditions they simply don't like. But once you start growing seasonally, garden gets easier, much easier. Instead of asking, how do I force lettuce to survive summer, ask, what wants to grow right now? So if your garden feels like it's struggling this summer, don't panic. Maybe it's time to stop growing crops that hate the heat and start growing the crops that love it. Now, if you are growing tomatoes in the summer heat and you start getting leaf curl, it could be the heat, it could be other things that you need to watch out for. This video right here will help you diagnose what the actual problem is so you can fix it quick. I'll see you guys next time.